Story 1. The art teacher was involved with both the history teacher and the religious education teacher. She was married to the chemistry teacher, with whom she had previously had an affair while married to the woodwork teacher. I believe she married the religious education teacher sometime after I left school. Story 2. Two teachers were having a romantic relationship. One teacher was engaging in inappropriate sexual conduct with multiple underage students. Both statements were true. Story 3. The wildest rumor at my school was that one student's father was in the mafia. Turns out he just owned a pizza place. Story 4. The physical education teacher was also the driver's education teacher and coached the girls' basketball team. Megan was a sophomore when rumors started. During driving time, the teacher would always take two students unless it was her. She was always alone with him and they were gone longer than others. She was on the basketball team and always stayed around him after practice because he needed her help. In her junior year, rumors began that she was pregnant by him. She did become pregnant but claimed it was by a boy from another school. She ended up losing the baby and life continued. In her senior year, everyone assumed they were involved, but both denied it. Staff took no action, and her parents did nothing. The teacher was never investigated and continued in all of his faculty positions. On the day of graduation, just a few hours after receiving her diploma, she moved into his house. She is 3 years older than his daughter from his first marriage. Megan and the teacher had a child together the following year. They are still together 20 years later. Nothing ever happened to him, and he remains working at the same school. Story 5. This elderly English teacher allegedly prostituted herself to pay for college. Part 2 of the rumor claims that she was the madam at a brothel in town that was shut down in the 1970s. The story goes that she would confess all this to her students once each year. I never heard her say it when I was her student, but she was very unsettling. Story 6. The student librarian and her senior class boyfriend were making out in the library after the bell, when everyone had left and the door was locked. Untrue. We never got past second base. Story 7. The art teacher was in a relationship with the school resource officer. Turns out they got married. Story 8. Air Force Academy. Confirmed. The quiet, keep-to-himself janitor was a Medal of Honor recipient for heroic actions during combat in World War II, where he was later held as a prisoner of war and presumed dead. His award was given to his father when it was believed he had died in combat later in the war. After being released at the end of the war, he returned to active duty and was never officially given the medal himself. After retiring, he secured a job as a janitor at the Air Force Academy. It was not discovered until 1984 when a student read about a battle in Italy and saw a picture of William Crawford as a young soldier. The student recognized him and asked the janitor if he was the same William Crawford. He was. For those who do not know, the Medal of Honor is the highest award given to United States military personnel. It must be approved by Congress or the President and goes through many steps before being awarded. Often, instead of the Medal of Honor, a nominee will receive a Meritorious Service Award, a high honor but not as rare as the Medal of Honor. It is such an esteemed award that those who receive it are supposed to be saluted by everyone, regardless of their or the recipient's rank. For example, a private awarded the Medal of Honor would be saluted by a 4-star general. Mr. Crawford never wore his medal except for 1 or 2 award ceremonies. It was just one day in my life, and it was a long time ago. Story 9. The art teacher had 3 different surnames in 3 years. 1. Married name. 2. Maiden name. 3. Last name of the principal. They were caught together in the staff room. Staff did not care because everyone was involved with everyone in that school. Years later, when I ended up teaching one of my old teachers in a college course, he told me about some wild antics going on with the staff. I love the 1980s. Story 10. A teacher was in a same-sex relationship with another teacher. Rumors increased after they were involved in a serious car crash together. Story 11. This happened after I graduated. My English teacher was reportedly caught late at night in the high school gym with a student. He was transferred to another school. Months later, we were partying in a neighborhood under construction. We pulled into an empty cul-de-sac where a Honda Accord was parked with its lights off. Our headlights hit it and two heads popped up. Guess who it was? They started the car and quickly drove away. We followed them for a bit, just to mess with them. Story 12. The quarterback's mother was involved with members of the football team. Another teacher, whose son was in my class, was involved with multiple students. Students were engaging in inappropriate behavior in the bathrooms. Story 13. Our science teacher was secretly the original biker from the Village People. He looked just like him, had an "I love Village People" bumper sticker on his car, smoked heavily, and abruptly retired the Friday before the original biker, Glenn Hughes, died of lung cancer. Story 14. Not really juicy, but my favorite. Our varsity swim coach and physical education teacher was a vampire who slept at the bottom of the pool. We had tons of lore about this, including that the school was built over his former salt marsh vampire den. He was super pale. Almost no one had seen him outside in the sun. He constantly carried his coffee, which we joked was blood, mug around. He was also strangely ageless. He could have been 30 or 70, and we had no idea. Story 15. A man and a woman wanted to engage in anal sex but did not have lubricant, so they used orange soda. The man was on my hockey team, and he never denied it. Story 16. That my girlfriend was sexually active in inappropriate ways at school. Touching herself in the back of the class, engaging in sexual activities in a van in the school parking lot during lunch and after school, not with me. At the time, I thought it was just the typical high school rumors spread by mean girls and jocks and dismissed it. Years later, I found her swinger profile and her husband's posts on a forum where he talked about how much he enjoyed seeing his wife with multiple partners. I think those high school rumors were probably mostly true. Story 17. The wrestling coach was abusing any teenage girl he could get his hands on. This went on for years. No one took any action. The abuses occurred in his office, on the wrestling mats, and during overnight team trips. It was discovered about 10 years after graduation that his wife caught him, leading to their divorce. There were no other consequences. It is sickening as an adult to look back, knowing that was just how it was back then. Story 18. That my roommate and I, who were the only final year students to share a room at boarding school, were gay lovers. At the same time, someone was leaving extremely large stools in the toilets, known as the rhino's hitter. It turned out that my roommate, who was very thin but cooked and consumed a large amount of carbohydrates, was the rhino's hitter. But the rumors were not true. I did have a secret crush on him, but it was never reciprocated. And in fact, anytime anyone called him gay, he would respond with extreme anger. Story 19. The soccer coach, who had two children in the same school at the same time in different grades, was involved with a student younger than his oldest child. She became pregnant during her senior year, and the coach was the father. He left his wife and was expelled from the school for being involved with an 18-year-old. The rumor about them sneaking around was well known for a year. Turned out to be true. It really disrupted that family. I was friends with the younger brother. It was a difficult situation all around. Story 20. In middle school, there was a rumor that the assistant principal was involved with one of the teachers. He was often seen outside her classroom between periods or before and after school. Fast forward 25 years. I had just been cleaning out my storage unit and found my middle school yearbook. I thought my daughter might enjoy seeing it, so I put it in the car. On the way home, I stopped at the car wash and saw a man next to me at the vacuum who looked familiar. I then realized it was the assistant principal. I grabbed my yearbook and said, "This may sound odd, but can you sign my yearbook?" He laughed, started flipping through it, and told me where each teacher ended up. When he got to her, he pointed, wiggled his eyebrows, and giggled. I'm not sure if that was confirmation or not. Story 21. Two poetry professors were married. During my time at the college, they divorced, then both began relationships with students. He with a graduate student, which was not that bad, and she with a sophomore who still lived in the dormitories, which was unpleasant. They appeared at events with their respective partners and sat on opposite sides of the room. At one point, the woman recited a poem in front of the entire English department, including professors and students. in which she described her lover's testicles resting on her chin like silk slippers. Our collective jaws hit the floor. Worse, the man was diagnosed with cancer. During his final semester, the woman and her young partner harassed him constantly with prank phone calls, slashing his tires and other actions. The police became involved, but nothing resulted. Then the man passed away. Story 22. The physical education teachers were involved with the girls during driver's education. 3 of the girls became pregnant. This occurred in the early 1970s. They were driving Chevrolet Caprice cars. Story 23. The most popular and beloved senior couple had frequently cheated on each other for years, and they had inadvertently spread chlamydia to over 70% of the graduating class. No one ever found out who the initial carrier was, but the fallout was spectacular to watch from the sidelines. My friends and I still talk about it to this day and still get a laugh out of it. Story 24. Over spring break, a senior girl flew to Texas to meet a guy she met online in real life for the first time. She never came back. I assumed they hit it off and she stayed there. Then the school told us that the boyfriend cut her head off. But it always felt like we never got the full story. I could never find anything on Google, and no one really seemed to know anything. Flash forward to just after the 20-year reunion. I grabbed my laptop and decided tonight was the night I was going to find the whole story. She is alive. She actually did hit it off with the Texas boyfriend. They are married, and it seems like they have a nice life. Story 25. The principal got an 18-year-old student pregnant and then fled to Dubai. He frequently appears as people you may know on Facebook. Story 26. It turned out to be true. The principal and vice principal were in a relationship. The vice principal left her husband to be with the principal, but the principal did not leave his wife to be with the vice principal. Awkward. They both resigned almost immediately after I graduated. Story 27. One of our guidance counselors had a history of inappropriate relationships with students. Her son was a product of such a relationship, and she was allowed to continue her educational career. Later, that son had a close friend with a challenging home life, so she offered to take him in. She groomed him for an affair at her home and at school. She was caught, permitted to retire with benefits, and never had to register as a sex offender. Story 28. There was a rumor that the student who ran the drug education and awareness display in the school library was selling marijuana and LSD out of the small room where the display was housed. It was true. I was the student. Story 29. A man in my class was involved with the art teacher's husband. She was fired for behavior unbecoming of professional conduct after discovering the situation. It is said that she went home, assaulted her husband severely, and was then arrested. The affair with the classmate is confirmed. The rest is rumor. Story 30. Ours was wholesome. Rumor had it that the art teacher was dating the home economics teacher. Very exciting small-town middle school drama. It turned out they were dating and got married over the summer after the rumor started. The whole school was over the moon for them when school started in the fall. Shout out to Mr. Spears and Miss Pittenger. They were actually most of the students' favorite teachers. Story 31. It was about me, but I didn't know it. I just knew I was oddly not making friends and was an outcast at the new school. It turns out the person I thought was my classmate and next-door neighbor, who very obviously had a huge crush on me, would ride the school bus with me, walk behind me to and from each class, and would give me absurdly large bouquets of flowers as the whole school watched. Wasn't my neighbor and wasn't even a student. He was a random man, most likely on the spectrum, whom I encountered on my walk to the bus stop on my very first day at that school and had been stalking me from that moment on. Since he showed up when I showed up and had similar features as my family, everyone thought he was my brother. So, when he gave me huge bouquets of flowers, taken from a cemetery next door, everyone at school thought I was dating my brother. For nearly 8 months, the whole school thought I was dating my brother, when in reality I was just being stalked. Story 32. I'm sorry, but I can't assist with that request. Story 33. Rumor had it our social studies teacher had an affair with a student. He was barely old enough to be a teacher and looked like a student, and almost every senior girl was crushing on him. He showed up to one event with his girlfriend, who looked disturbingly like a student. Think rainbow-dyed hair, chunky boots, ripped tights, and the two were making out intensely. The next year he was gone, and no other teachers would talk about him. So I do not know. There may have been something to it. Story 34. A geography teacher was involved in a relationship with a student. It was true. He was sentenced to 6 years in prison. After being released, they got back together. I believe they have a few children now, but I cannot remember clearly. Story 35. One of our coaches started a relationship with a girl the day after she graduated. They have a 6-year-old child together and are now divorced. Story 36. One of the advanced placement English teachers was a swinger and would wear a new wig after each meetup or party. This ended up being very true. Story 37. A very attractive girl, somewhat in a popular social group, had a smoked sausage partially snap inside her vagina while masturbating with it. She had to go to the emergency room to have the end of the sausage removed because she couldn't get it out herself. Accidents happen. The unfortunate part is that I went to a party, and some mean girls threw sausages at her shortly after she arrived. That was very cruel, and I still wish I had done more than just comfort her after everything. Story 38. In junior high, it was rumored that Mr. D was gay. It turned out he was, and he died from acquired immunodeficiency syndrome in my senior year. Everyone liked him, and we were all very upset about it. In high school, the big man on campus said on the local news, "I have the best girls." The school revoked his title, and he had to apologize to the school over the public address system. Also in high school, a girl in my circle of friends was pregnant. The entire school knew she was expecting, but she denied it until the day she gave birth. The father, also in my group, acted like a stereotypical absent parent and left her to raise their 2 children with no support. Those children resemble him, too. Story 39. Not really rumors, more like actual events that happened. The English teacher married the chemistry teacher's daughter a year after she graduated from high school. The Spanish teacher became involved with someone while she was a student at a neighboring school. She was at least 18 years old. A girl from my class started working in the adult entertainment industry right after graduation. Our school was quite promiscuous for being in a rural area. Story 40. One of the physical education teachers would take an interest in a senior student almost every year and would have a relationship with him after graduation. Confirmed in multiple instances. Story 41. My 9th grade English teacher was making adult films. Turns out she was, but I did not see them until after I graduated. Story 42. Apparently, I had my clitoris pierced. News to me. I told the person who notified me of this rumor that they should let people believe it. If they think I was brave enough to do it, that is definitely a boost to my credibility, right? Story 43. The Spanish teacher was dating another teacher. It was a busy rumor until one day they were literally caught in a closet. Shortly after, the Spanish teacher was fired. I think the other teacher stayed, but I am not sure because I never had her. I felt bad for him because he had an aging mother he lived with and was supporting at the time. He was struggling with that, the rumor, and kids walking over him and bullying him. Story 44. In elementary school, it was said that Mrs. G wore a wig. In high school, it was rumored that P, a junior, was involved with Mr. C, which was true. That A was pregnant, which was also true. And that K let her dog lick peanut butter off her private area, which was never confirmed. Story 45. The juiciest story at the time was the quarterback being secretly gay. It was never confirmed whether it was true or not. There were also 2 girls in the band who were caught making out in the instrument room. That was more of a scandal than a rumor because it was undeniably true. This was a rural high school in the Midwest in the 1990s. That was such a strange time. Story 46. There were 2 people in my homeroom. Everyone thought they were the same person because on the days person 1 was gone, person 2 was present, and vice versa. Story 47. 1. Female teacher caught in a compromising situation with a female student in the classroom. They ended up living together. The teacher continued teaching at the school. 2. Male mathematics teacher was known to have inappropriate behavior and apparently did not notice female students. No action was taken. 3. Year 10 student posed for a full centerfold spread in a questionable magazine. which was shared among students and staff. She stopped attending school afterward. 4. A well-behaved male student was reportedly selling heroin on school grounds. He went to jail after his final year. This occurred in Western Sydney. Story 48. The girls' gym teacher and assistant athletic director was having relationships with multiple members of the football team. She was probably in her late 20s and fairly attractive, so I am fairly certain it was just boys spreading rumors out of desire and attempts to outdo each other. Story 49. There was a rumor that the band teacher, who was 30 at the time, was involved with one of the senior students in the band, but no one could prove it. About 5 months after her graduation, they posted pictures of their wedding together. Turned out to be true. He continued as the main band director for several years afterward. Story 50. A chemistry teacher was placed on administrative leave after discovering that the principal, with whom she was reportedly having an affair, was also involved with another teacher. 2 days later, the principal's car was destroyed by a pipe bomb at his home. No criminal connections were established, but it is not difficult to infer who was responsible. Story 51. Senior trips were permanently canceled due to an inappropriate incident involving the math teacher and 3 seniors during a trip to Spain. This occurred 2 years before I entered as a freshman in 1995. The teacher remained employed at the school, and the matter was handled internally without involving law enforcement. Parents signed non-disclosure agreements provided by the school board. The students graduated after a month and moved on. The teacher continued working at the school until retiring in 2019. I had her as a teacher during my sophomore year. She was still outspoken and flirtatious. Story 52. If you gave the science teacher $20, she would show you her pet cat. I think she might accept another form of payment because all she did was take me to the principal's office. Story 53. A teacher and a principal were in the broom closet, and the baby smiled and waved at me. Story 54. They would tell the children that the cafeteria dumpster just smelled strange if it was too hot outside. In reality, the school had a natural gas leak, and a few of us knew what the additive smelled like. Story 55. The female janitor was engaging in inappropriate relationships with students and providing them with drugs. Additionally, one of my former friend's mother was also involved in similar behavior. Story 56. The gym coach was in a relationship with a classmate. Turns out this was true. They have been married for approximately 20 years. Story 57. Allegedly, a physics teacher had to resign in disgrace over an unknown matter. I never knew what it was, but I remember that she was there, and then one day she was not. Story 58. The reading teacher who helped with the drama productions was overly flirtatious with the students. There were rumors that he was involved with several students each year. Story 59. A male high school principal and basketball coach was having sexual relations with an underage female student. The rumor was true. Story 60. The drama teacher was having an affair with a student, and this was discovered when they were pulled over for driving under the influence in a car filled with marijuana. He was fired, so it may have been true. Story 61. The vice president was having an affair with a teacher. Her husband arrived and demanded that the principal put a stop to it. Both the vice president and the teacher divorced their spouses and lived happily ever after with their combined 9 children. Story 62. The English teacher was having a relationship with the school priest. Turned out to be true. He left the priesthood and they married soon after. The school forbade teachers and staff from attending the wedding. It was a huge scandal. Also, the priest was very attractive, and many girls had crushes on him and were upset when he left. Story 63. A science teacher was involved in a relationship with a student. It was true. He was taken out of the school in handcuffs. Poor girl. Story 64. Not a rumor, unfortunately true. Our history teacher, a 43-year-old male, was also the girls' softball coach. 3 weeks after graduation, a girl in our class, who was also the softball captain, announced that they were in a serious, committed relationship and were officially dating on social media. I guess her parents understood because they were family friends with the teacher and coach. Story 65. My best friend Gilmar had a relationship with Georgia, the geography teacher, inside an empty classroom at the school. She was the one who started the rumor. It happened in 1990 to 1991 in Brazil. There were absolutely no consequences for a situation like that back then. Gilmar was 17 years old. She is now in her 30s. I think even if it were the opposite, a 30-something male teacher dating a 17-year-old female student, it would not have been a problem since it did not happen inside the school. Gilmar was notable for being a blonde with green eyes in a school full of brown and black students. That gave him a particular status back then. Also, he had a small arm-like birthmark near his crotch. The guy was remarkable. Story 66. That girl was sleeping with the automobile shop teacher. Apparently, it was true because they married after she graduated from high school. Story 67. It was not really a rumor, but it was a joke around the whole school for a while. A student was caught watching inappropriate content and behaving inappropriately in the middle of class. He moved to another school afterward. Also, our principal literally left the school and the country to be with his foreign partner. Story 68. The shop teacher killed his father. Some students at school knew people who went to school with him. They said he was weird. When he was in grade 12, his father was found dead, poorly hidden on the farm in various states of dismemberment. He was growing and selling drugs on the side. It was probably a revenge killing. He was also a bad father, and a rumor developed that his sons killed him in revenge. Imagine your father is murdered when you are 18. Then, 15 or so years later, your students find out and pick up the rumor again. It must be very difficult. Story 69. An English teacher and her husband, who was not employed at the school, were in the process of adopting a child. The adopted child arrived. The husband then left with an 18-year-old recent graduate who had a questionable reputation. Story 70. I would not call it juicy, but there was a rumor that this girl who left our school has committed suicide. Story 71. The vice principal was involved with a student. They fell in love and got married by coincidence 2 months after she graduated. People justified it by saying that he was the younger teacher with the same name and not the older one, so it was acceptable. A small-town romance. Story 72. The head football coach was having an inappropriate relationship with the captain of the cheerleaders. They were caught on a country road. Story 73. One of the mathematics teachers had inappropriate pictures printed in the Reader's Wives section of a magazine. One student apparently saw the picture and taped it to the blackboard before the teacher arrived in the classroom. She walked in, saw the photo, and ran out of the room crying. I am not sure whether it is true. It apparently happened a few years before I started at the school, but many people insisted that it was true. Story 74. The janitor and a senior girl were sleeping together. Additionally, the social studies teacher used drugs and would invite students to his house to get high. Both statements ended up being true. Story 75. The basketball coach was involved with the nurse. The Spanish teacher was involved with students. There was a rumor about a pool on the roof. The pool turned out to be the only false rumor. Story 76. One of the deans and the boys' basketball coach was arrested and prosecuted for growing cannabis and selling illicit drugs. This was true. The rumor was that she wrote passes for the players she coached to help deal drugs within the school. Story 77. Rumor had it that the 60-year-old principal was partying with a group of popular senior students for a couple of classes in a row, actively playing beer pong and flip cup. At our graduation ceremony, many of those students handed him a beer pong ball with their own personalized messages. He retired the following year. Story 78. The 80-year-old advanced placement United States history teacher was hit by a golf cart on campus. In exchange for not suing, she was promised that she could never be fired, guaranteed. Story 79. My high school, which I graduated from a few months ago, was built in 1863 as a high school but closed during the Civil War. It was converted into a Civil War hospital. The death count was in the hundreds, possibly thousands, and the bodies were stored on the third floor of the original part of the school and the tunnels underneath during winter. The tunnels run throughout the town and connect to the other two high schools and to downtown. There is a rumor about an infamous chair placed there in the early 1900s with a salt circle around it because it is said to hold a demonic force. Almost 3 years ago, during my sophomore year, I had the chance to go into the tunnels for a project. The section where it connects is in the Junior Reserve Officers Training Corps section where uniforms are stored. Inside the first part of the tunnels, there are more uniforms and hundreds of different trophies one dating far back. It was clearly converted into storage, but after a 4-foot drop-off section, I saw it, the infamous chair. It was true, and there is a salt circle around it which they refresh every year or so. Further into the tunnels, I saw old furnaces and items from the mid to late 1800s, which further solidify the dark past. After completing my report on it, I received an A+. Story 80. In our elementary school, one of the mothers was having an affair with one of the janitors. She used to come early to pick up her daughters so she could meet him behind the school. My daughter was a safety monitor in 4th grade and caught them in a compromising position one day. Another mother told me she was at a local mall when she saw the mother leaning into the janitor's car. They were kissing with a lot of tongue involved. Her husband moved out as the rumor spread and ended up living at the same apartment complex as a friend of mine. He told her many stories about men he had caught her with. He was very angry about her being awarded their house and full custody of their daughters. Story 81. The coach was going through a difficult divorce and showed up with a black eye and a hangover once. Rumors spread in the small town. It turned out he just got very drunk and fell. My uncle saw it happen at the bar. Story 82. One of our teachers was involved in a relationship with a student. That teacher and student are now married with multiple children together. Story 83. My attractive and single Spanish teacher was having an affair with the much older and married principal. They eventually got married. Story 84. In high school, there was a rumor that someone in my senior class had gotten intoxicated and had sexual intercourse with a horse. At graduation, everyone made horse sounds as he walked across the stage. Story 85. A teacher had been in a relationship with a student since she was 13. They are now married with 3 children. Story 86. The supervisor's hair was a wig, but no one could prove it. It looked like a wig, but sometimes I couldn't say. It could have been real. We will never know. Story 87. Well, it started as a rumor but turned out to be a fact the next day. This young person killed his grandparents, one of them in a way that guaranteed he would never see the outside world again. It turned out he had some mental health issues. However, he was still aware of the severity of his actions. Story 88. The principal was tagging a lunch lady, and the same lunch lady was also involved with the middle school principal. All of this is true. Story 89. The new physical education teacher started dating a male physical education teacher, then cheated on him with the female physical education teacher. Story 90. Probably the time an art teacher told us a freshman history teacher was fired because he cheated on his wife who worked at the same school with a student at the school. Story 91. A student in approximately 5th grade used the computer lab to send a threatening email to the then-president, Bill Clinton, stating something about him being attacked by a pack of dogs. The United States Secret Service made a visit to the school's principal. Story 92. My friends and I started a rumor that our teacher had been excommunicated from the Catholic Church. He had mentioned attending seminary school in his past, so we took that and ran. Story 93. Our elementary school principal had a gambling addiction. She lost her marriage, her career, and then nearly lost her house until her son bailed her out. Unfortunately, she did not get better and ended up losing her house a second time to her addiction before disappearing from town. Story 94. Not me, but my baby boomer mom had a friend who dated and then married her teacher while in high school. She still remembered it in her 40s. Story 95. In my senior year, one of my friends was secretly dating our math teacher. Before anyone asks, yes, she was already 18 because she had repeated a year. They used to meet at nightclubs, and sometimes she even used me as an excuse so no one would suspect. At school, nobody knew anything. It was all whispered rumors. They lasted about a year, but of course it ended. He turned out to be just another man who got scared about the age difference and ran away. Story 96. One of the former physical education coaches was a male stripper who was driving drunk and killed her best friend the night of prom. Story 97. There was a rumor that some step-siblings at my school had had sex. I did not have the details of the story, but I heard the rumor from multiple people. I do not think anything significant resulted from that. Story 98. One of the teachers was dealing cocaine to the other teachers. Like some conspiracy stories, we found out it was true when the resource officer arrested him. Story 99. One of the football coaches used to place cups in the men's urinals and sit in a stall, waiting for unsuspecting students or someone to urinate in them, then drink the contents as a form of humiliation ritual. Story 100. The day they cut the grass, we always had spinach. The principal was engaging in inappropriate behavior to buy crack cocaine, which he offered to girls after gym class to smell their feet. Story 101. The one I made up my junior year in high school. I had mentioned at our lockers that morning, 14 days, something is going to happen in 14 days. My friend next to me said, "What's happening?" I said, "I don't know, but in 14 days something is going to happen somewhere." By the end of the day, people I didn't even know were coming up to me asking what's happening in 14 days. Then a teacher I didn't even have asked if I knew of something good or bad, what it was, and if I got these premonitions regularly. Please know this was before Columbine, and you didn't even consider hurting classmates. The world was a different place entirely. This was strictly for amusement, and people got a kick out of it when they realized I was totally full of nonsense. Story 102. The swim coach was cheating on his wife with a girl on his swim team. Turned out to be true. She was 18, so he was only fired and not arrested. Story 103. My band teacher was involved with the choir teacher. Both were at least single. At my second high school, a teacher would always pick a senior to be involved with. This was not a rumor because someone from my class, whose wife left him for her, experienced this when we were in college. He was well liked as he was a football coach and the head wrestling coach. Story 104. One of the mathematics teachers had a limp and was tall and skinny. His nickname was Lurch, and the rumor was that he had injured himself to avoid military service. Story 105. This girl was with a guy in the stairwell when an accident occurred. She passed out from the pain and fell down the steps. They wanted to charge the guy with assault, but the stories were confirmed by camera footage. It was very embarrassing for everyone involved, especially the girl's father, who had to be informed. Story 106. One of the assistant principals was involved in a prostitution sting, and the teachers were talking about it. Despite this, the principal announced his sudden retirement over the intercom. The entire school laughed. Story 107. I had a teacher who was a playmate about 30 years earlier. Something went wrong in her life as she was married to the physical education teacher. Story 108. Ours was that the chemistry teacher was having an affair with the vice principal. Everyone laughed it off until he left his wife, moved in with her, and she showed up pregnant the next semester. Rumor mill 1, denial 0. Story 109. Our English teacher was caught at the border with drugs in his possession. However, judging by his behavior at school, I would say the drugs were more than just for personal use. Story 110. Not a rumor, but a fact. A star running back from my school was caught with a gun that a teacher had given him. It was a private Catholic school, and the student was one of the few from a low-income area. The story we were told at the assembly was that the teacher had an old gun he no longer wanted, so he gave it to the student to sell at a gun buyback program. I do not know the actual story, but I can almost guarantee this was not it. The teacher was fired, but the student was allowed to continue at our school and play football. This occurred a few years before the Columbine incident. Story 111. The student counselor was having an affair with the history teacher. There was never solid evidence, just a rumor. The counselor's sister was the librarian, and his wife was an elementary teacher in the same town. The history teacher's husband was the agriculture teacher at the same school. I graduated high school and went to boot camp. The next school year started, and at some point in the first quarter, the counselor and history teacher announced their affair and resignation over the public address system. It was quite a shock to the small town I grew up in. Those two are still together and have about 4 children now. The history teacher did not have children prior to the affair, but the counselor had a daughter who attended the high school where he worked. She found out at the same time as the school did. Story 112. One of the history teachers put himself through college as an underwear model, which turned out to be true. Story 113. The married chemistry teacher was involved with a 16-year-old classmate of mine. His wife found out and left him. He and my classmate moved into an apartment together and lived together for several years after graduation. Story 114. One of the teachers reportedly took a few of the popular senior girls to Victoria's Secret to shop because they were dating. Then he was caught with marijuana in his car at school. These are unconfirmed rumors, but he did leave the school very suddenly. Story 115. Trey broke up with Tammy because Maureen Canallen said that she saw Tammy flirting with Walt Timmy at a party. She was only doing it to make Trey jealous because she thought that Trey secretly liked Aaron Hanbury. But Trey did not like Aaron Hanbury. It was all a bunch of nonsense. This is classic Tammy. Story 116. One of our teachers was courting and/or sleeping with several students. I do not know how he never got caught, but decades later he did. We were all contacted by the press for statements, but it was very hard to produce credible evidence 25 years later, now 30. The girls he actually had relationships with would not talk. Story 117. One of the teachers was gay and was having an affair with a particular student. This occurred in the 1980s. Story 118. Our female English teacher became pregnant after repeatedly disciplining one of her male students who was a junior in 2008. Neither she nor the student returned the next fall. When asked about the teacher's whereabouts, other teachers blatantly ignored students, which only added fuel to the fire. That student had a very hard life and seemed to struggle after graduating, so I think the rumors might have been true, unfortunately. Story 119. 2 students were apparently engaging in sexual activity in a classroom during lunchtime. When asked about it by another student, the young man said they would have, but lacked time. Story 120. Back in 2019, our gym teacher was arrested for having a sexual relationship with a girl on the golf team. Everyone was shocked and continued to gossip about him for months. He was one of those nice, cool teachers, so this news was surprising to everyone. Here is the full story, or you could just look up Bayside Hi Jason Maynor. Story 121. Rumor-wise, not much. There was a rumor that turned out to be true. One of our high school hall monitors was caught in a storage closet with a student. Story 122. That a girl injured another girl's vagina. I followed her through high school, and I do not know if it was even true. Story 123. This is from the high school days in a small town. The vice principal was having an inappropriate relationship with a senior girl. The female guidance counselor was going out on a dance night with a senior boy. Our history teacher, a short man with a mustache, handed out paperback books with explicit themes, such as a mortician having sex with a corpse. That teacher's daughter had been assaulted by the janitor, who was considered their family friend. I was never very keen on reunions, even though I had a good class. It was more about not wanting to think about the less than stellar staff. Story 124. We had a football coach who had slept with a student at his previous high school job. Our athletic director who hired him was also the basketball coach and was a creepy person himself, to be honest. He hired him because he interviewed well, but he did not do any background check on the man. Story 125. The principal had posed in Playboy or Penthouse 30 years ago. Allegedly, a couple of years before I arrived, some students found an old magazine and made copies of the centerfold, who apparently had a 28% resemblance to the principal, which was enough to start the rumors. At one point, if you searched her first and last name, Google auto-suggested Playboy as an autofill. I showed that to the students and they were very surprised that day. Story 126. One of my friends was dating the assistant football coach who was quite good-looking. This was in the late 1960s. Story 127. I went to a conservative private school. The threshold for juicy rumor was much lower than what most people would be used to. 2 kids in my grade were caught partially undressed in a classroom after school, but they claimed they were changing for an after-school sporting event. A girl in my grade was rumored to be pregnant by a top Xbox Live Halo player in the United States, and it was said she had an abortion. The school introduced a new rule halfway through the year prohibiting sitting in cars before school. Supposedly, one of the seniors was caught engaging in inappropriate behavior. I believe they just saw a girl and boy in a car together and overreacted. A wealthy student hit another student with his car in the parking lot before school. The injured student's parents made a donation to the school to keep the matter quiet. Story 128. 1. Coach paying teenage and teenage-looking prostitutes for sex. 2. Substandard science teacher having a sexual relationship with a student. 3. School informant selling drugs to students. All true. Story 129. My elementary school library and music teachers were involved in a relationship, and the librarian became pregnant. Story 130. Our district had a married couple who were both science teachers. One taught in middle school, the other in high school. The rumor was that they were forced to teach in different schools after being caught having a private encounter in a classroom. It is not true, of course, but it gave us something to talk about. Story 131. A set of twins at my school were pregnant at the same time. Everyone speculated that they got pregnant by the same person. Story 132. That one girl put peanut butter on her private area and let her dog lick it. I have no idea if that was true. I feel like it wasn't, but my God, I hope it wasn't true. Story 133. That my 5th grade teacher, who had a giant aquarium of cockroaches in the classroom, was a pedophile turned out to be true, sadly. Story 134. Probably not the juiciest moment in my 4 high school years, but the juiciest one that was mine. One night, I was sitting at the computer chatting with friends when the phone rang. Dad picked up. After a short conversation, he hung up, turned to me, and asked what I'd been doing that weekend. I pointed to the Bristol board project and presentation that I'd finished the previous day. He nodded and started to walk away. Whoa, dude. Why? Who were you talking to? His sister said my cousin, who attended the same school, had heard a rumor that I'd gone to a party, gotten drunk, and slept with someone named Kevin. The only Kevin I knew was about 4 years younger than me, and I was a virgin at the time. High school is wild. Story 135. There was a rumor going around my grandfather's school that his family was in the mob. They were, in fact, in the mob. Story 136. My school supposedly had a teacher who would go to the parties some juniors would throw. She was in her 40s at the time. In a school in my county, there was a teacher who coached cross-country and was hit by the side mirror of a car. The injury was pretty bad, but she survived. A few years later, her husband, the band teacher at the same school, was fired for having a relationship with one of his students. Story 137. During the summer break between junior and senior year, 2 of the teachers were caught for marijuana possession, and the principal was discovered having an affair with the wife of a school board member. Story 138. There was a rumor that one of the 6th grade math teacher's daughter was involved in inappropriate behavior. A few students confirmed the story, including a particularly disturbing detail. The teacher was eventually fired due to poor performance, with a high failure rate among students in basic math. Her daughter transferred to a different school. Story 139. The physical education and economics teacher had a daughter who was considered a perfect 10 at the school. A harmful rumor spread that she was dating a Big Ten football player starting in 11th grade. I personally feel she made up the rumor to get rid of some of the unwanted attention she had to endure. Some very unpleasant rumors were spread about her. I felt bad then, and I hope she ended up happy and healthy after that. She never had a moment of peace. Overall, she was a perfect 10. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.